talking about preparations for the 2023 general elections. You heard the chairman of INEC there highlighting what to expect on that day. We've got here in the studios Professor Olurode, former National Commissioner for INEC. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well, rightly, there's been a lot of concern and interest in terms of what will happen, what should we expect, what's going to happen on election day, will things be right, will we get logistics right, what about security, should we be cautious about politicians' performance on that day, have we stamped out vote buying, several things because of what we've seen before. I mean, you perhaps from a distance, you've been observing the scenario and looking at the way things are playing out. What sticks out for you, especially amidst all of these concerns that several people have been raising?
Well, I think the first point to recognize is INEC dogged determination to deliver to the country a better set of elections. I think INEC is determined. And psychologically, I think, and in terms of logistics, INEC seems to be prepared. Of course, that is not to say the challenges probably could be said to be more overwhelming than when Jega was the chair of the Electoral Commission, particularly because of simultaneous attacks on INEC assets. And these are the foundations for credible elections. If the very premises of good elections or credible, transparent elections are being undermined deliberately by attacks, of course, I don't think it will be too hospitable to think that the preparations will not be affected one way or the other.
But in terms of this build-up to elections, perhaps if you could take it back to while you were in the commission, do we have the same amount of agitation, or is it calmer compared to that time?
No, elections have always been traumatic. People have always been very agitative. In fact, you will recall that we had to postpone one election, you know. So usually it's the same. The only thing that has changed perhaps is these attacks. They were not there because there were other acts of sabotage, but this one were overwhelming. And they are hitting the roots and so close to elections. Elections will hold in less than 40 days' time.
Yeah. But the length of time that we have for the campaigns, has it contributed in any way to perhaps just calming the nerves of everybody who is involved?
No, I shouldn't think so. In fact, you can say from one election to the other, people are always campaigning. It's not any new thing at all. And people are used to the same set of information is being dished out to them. That shouldn't be, because you can even campaign up to the point of, or up to the day of the election. On the day of the election itself, campaigns do go on.
But have you been able to get the polls of perhaps a fraction or some voters? Because this time, with the deployment of beavers, I hear a lot more people say, well, they're confident that this time their vote will count, whoever they go to vote for. So they're going in that confidence to this election, so they seem a lot calmer. Do you see the same thing from anywhere else?
I would like to say that election technology had consistently been deployed for, generally speaking, for our elections. It's just the tempo. Now,
but not in this,
it's very massive.
Okay.
And I get worried myself. But at the same time, the INEC had done very well by making sure it had tested the beavers and the other. The only one that is coming, this is not even new. The INEC viewing results is not really new because it was deployed in, I think, Ekiti and also in Osun. And it worked. And they now have a plan to even do a modeling, I mean, to do a mock kind of testing for this technology. You see, we shouldn't forget that while INEC is deploying each technology into the electoral process, I'm sure usually there's a backup. And apart from the backup, you are not completely eliminating the manual thing itself. It's not going to be completely eliminated one day. The human agency will still be there. There'll still be human intervention. What you are trying to do is to minimize the degree and the scope of human discretion in the electoral process, which I think it makes sense, especially in terms of result. If you recall that from one polling unit to the next level, to a ward level, there could be attacks, there could be hijack of results. If you now use you now use technology to deploy that, human intervention is reduced. But at the same time, you're still going to do whatever manual process you are going to. You can still recall your beavers and unload it and see what it contains, just to make sure there is proper tally.
I've been just wondering, as you're speaking, you were once, of course, a national commissioner, and I'm sure you're also looking at, I wonder what the state of mind of national commissioners usually is at this time. If they're anxious, when you look at the weight, when you look at the burden, that INEC carries, and how the success of the elections and even perhaps even of the country, lies on the shoulders of INEC, because people worry about election violence. You see some people not, very certain about the future. Every time that we have an electoral cycle approaching, especially one that could see a change when, a president, for instance, is done with his tenure, there's usually, some nervousness, and sometimes you have predictions. And when you look at the elements in this particular election, if things are not done right, a lot...
The country can go under.
Exactly.
No,
so
sure.
When you look at that, how do national commissioners bear the burden of that?
It's a national project. And the only equivalent, which is not really an equivalent in terms of what are at stakes, is the national census. But because the national census also has to take place simultaneously. How I wish it is possible to isolate the troubled part of the country and do the elections separately. But again, it's going to affect the other elections, because once people get to know this is the trend, this is where...
The results.
It's most likely to affect that. So, but I think they definitely, certainly, national commissioners, they can't sleep well. Just as the candidate, I pity the candidate as well. What is going to happen?
Why do you pity the candidates?
Oh, because it's a whole burden on them until the election and their supporters. Each time I go to the field when we were in INEC, when you would think that, and I shouldn't be emotionally involved. It's just to make sure that you get the process right. If thumb printing, sometimes in a very competitive election, just one ballot alone can cause disaster. In terms of sorting, where should this go? So I don't see how any of the national commissioners can sleep well till after the elections.
Is there something we can do about it?
Even look at the court. Look at the role of the court in our elections. It's huge. The role of the court brings a lot of uncertainty. How I wish INEC has a final decision as to who the candidate will be. The INEC, there'll be all kinds of surprises being sprung up at INEC as elections go by. You can't be too certain about anything. The name is on the ballot. It's on the ballot today. The court says rule at one level, reinstate the name, remove the name again.
What do you think that we can do to, downplay the stakes? Is there anything that we can do, maybe which we haven't quite explored fully? Because I know that, the media is doing its best. Maybe the religious elite are also doing their best to let people know that there will be a country after this. Election is just one event.
Yeah, what makes our elections to be filled with this high sense of trepidation, anxiety, fear, will the country make it? It's just because of the power conundrum. I look at the governor of a state, the power they exercise. Look at the president of a country. Look at how many parastatals. That is why, see, for people that are very positive about this country, there's no way you can reduce tensions at elections until you do something. You just have to do something with the power equilibrium in this country. It's so massive. Why should the president exercise so much power? What for? Because at the end of the day, what is important for the country is peaceful coexistence, get food on the table, get employment for the boys. Look at the the massive participation. Look at how many youths have been captured in the registration. The result, almost 75% of youth in this country. I mean, the elections are all the elections are in their hands.
Yeah.
Because 18 to 50 constituting almost 75% of the voters.
I'll ask this one question and then I'll send it to Lagos. You say that you're feeling sorry for the candidates.
Oh, for the election managers, the administrators.
Yes, but only recently, just yesterday, I think, you launched this program whereby you intend to hold candidates to their electoral promises.
Yeah.
Which is even putting them more on edge. Is there a reason why you've decided to do that?
No, it's not even me. I was invited as a guest speaker at the forum. And the thing is that when you look at campaign promises, like we agreed yesterday, it's like marriage vows. Oh, I will love you till death. Candidates will promise to even deliver the moon to your house. They will promise to deliver stars. But they never, most of them, they are never serious at this. They just say anything. And we are suggesting that, look, because campaign promises are not justiciable, it creates a challenge. And people are going to vote. The degree for vote, what the candidate are after is to have votes delivered for them. But those promises are made to the ordinary electorate, who will jump at them, and on the basis of which they might decide to cast their ballot one way or the other. But you cannot be held accountable to those promises. Where is electoral accountability? Where is governance to be placed? So I think we might have to begin to think of what can we do to hold candidates accountable to what they promised the country. And now document your campaign promises, attach it to the document you're going to submit to INEC. Of course, you need to now be thinking of constitutional amendment, because so many sections of the Constitution that you cannot go to court on. Look at the section that talks about the primary purpose of government shall be that the government of the federation will be based on what? On democracy and the principles of social justice. Where is the social justice? Where is equity? You know, and where is full participation by the people? So it's a way of just escalating, making sure that governance is taken more seriously. But one of the candidates, fortunate, I wouldn't want to mention him, I promised, that is going to deliver on all these promises. And some people I know are documenting those promises now.
Well, let's move this conversation to Lagos now, my colleagues.
Thank you, Mawkwe. Well, Prof, you know, one of the things that you said just before Mawkwe asked the final question, or the last question she asked you, is around the voters, the young people who are going to be voting. And if you look at the election statistics, voter statistics as released by documented by the chairman of INEC yesterday, it speaks to a lot. And I just want to ask you concerning that and how significantly people really do understand what's going on. For instance, out of more than 93 million people who are supposed to vote, 39.65 of them are between ages 18 and 34, and 35.75% are between ages 35 and 49. Together, they make 75.39% of total voters. That's it right there, and that means less than 25% of voters in this election coming in February are above age 49. I would like you to speak to the quantum of voter education that should precede this election and what your expectations are in the light of these statistics. Because hitherto, I don't know if we have ever gotten up to 30% of voters on any register since 1999 to come out to vote. So how well do you think we're doing, or would you say we're doing in terms of voter mobilization, voter education, so that this whole exercise is not in vain?
It's not coming up again.
Can you hear me now, sir? Prof, can you hear me now?
Yes, I heard the last part. Yes. Yeah, you're talking about voter education.
Yes.
We should drive voter education.
How well do you think we're doing in that regard, given the statistics?
Go out there. Voter education is very, very expensive. INEC will do its own to the best of the fund that is made available to INEC. Political parties are also expected to be involved in voter education. The same thing applies to media houses as well. But I don't think we are getting the people out there to also access information that is required to make informed choices when it comes to election. For example, look at the people who are resident in the remotest parts of the country, in the villages, in areas that are very difficult to access, that are not accessible by road. How do we deliver on voter education to them? Because when you look at casting the vote, wrong printing of ballot papers, you come to the conclusion that there isn't sufficient voter education out there. Of course, we have so many media houses, radio. You remove the possibility of delivering voter education through online means by giving information, dishing out information on your mobile devices. That is not going to be accessible to majority of Nigerian voters because of the literacy level in this country. And how much can INEC do? The onus is on those who are looking to harvest votes, the candidates and the political parties. INEC, as much as possible, can do it the minimum in terms of delivering on voter education. The buck should stop on the table of the candidates and political parties. And of course, media houses can do voluntary voter education today, because without proper voter education, without adequate voter education, people will not be able to make informed choices. And where wrong choices are made, the country is going to be worse for it. So I think it's a task for, you see, if we have volunteers having a role to play in our electoral process, I don't think we should be talking about paucity of voter education. But there are not many for people are just every attempt to support people will demand for monetary reward. And where money culture is so rampant, you can't get volunteers to come out there to say, to see, and to participate. What can we do for our country?
Prof, well, Prof, perhaps the
so that is
office,
the challenge.
Yes.
If I may ask, how many members of the public out there had made attempts to just go out voluntarily to give information to members of the public in the marketplaces, in the churches, in the mosque, just to enhance voter participation in the electoral process? Everything is
Prof,
money is
as we try to manage our time, if you can hear me, Professor Olurode, as we try to manage our times, perhaps we should see that level of political will or willingness, for want of description now, from the Office of the National Commissioner for Voter Education, to engage the media, first of all, and then we'll see, the success that will be recorded from that point. I'm just as concerned about the tension, the trepidation around our elections as my colleague Malkwe is, which is why, I recall that concern raised at Chatham House yesterday by one of the participants who asked if it was possible, to review that template proposed by former President Goodluck Jonathan on a single tenure of 5 years or 7 years to encourage some form of stability in the polity as against what we have now, where elections in the country are more warlike than they are, items and icons of peace. And in that regard, the concern is also expressed in other parts of Africa, you know, where there's the proposal for a national agenda, regardless of political parties, where, you know, the concern is this is our direction, this is where we want to head in terms of development, and this is a developmental template for the country in the next 5 years, in the next 6 years, and this is what we're going to achieve, and this is where we'll direct our resources and our energies at. I wonder if you're thinking in that regard as well, and it's a template that can be considered, Prof.
We cannot be talking of matters that touch on amendment to the constitution of the country. We can't be talking about that now. That would be a debate for another day. What we should be concerned with is how do we reduce the possible tension, the environment. How do you make the environment of the election in this country to be more friendly and to not see it as a total war on the country? And I'm saying that, look, the federal government needs to do more. For example, you're now getting involved in the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers and Marine Workers to support INEC logistics in electoral operation. Now, at the same time, you have a government that are divided national assets in terms of ASU, CONUS. So what I'm saying is that you need to build national institutions, not to want to break national institutions, because you will still need those national institutions. It's good that we now see an asset in the Nigerian Union of Railway and Transport Workers, in Marine Workers at the same time. They can support, and they have supported in the past, national elections, because as an asset, they are part of the country. But at the same time, you have some government wanting to break that solidarity across religion, across ethnic barriers, across geographical barriers. So what do you make of that? So let's build institutions that can be regarded as, that can be dependable, reliable, and we can deploy during the process of election. We recognize this when Jega was the chairman of INEC, that in the transport union, it's a national access for resolving some of the logistical conundrum in our electoral process. We can't be talking of single time or whatever now. That should be a debate for another day. What should be looking at is, look, if you, in the future, you can be talking of how do you reduce the power of the president? How do you make sure that a national government is formed? If I know that I'm in this party, if I lose the election, I know at the end of the day, it doesn't stop me from becoming a minister. Why would I want the country to go under? Just because on the basis of one election. We need to build a national cohesion to govern together.
A very important point, you know, which is something we will also look forward to talking about.
If I'm going to lose all, Chamberlain, if I'm going to lose all in an election.
So this winner takes all scenario, zero-sumness.
Is what is destructive.
We need to address it. I think it's a fantastic point you made, Prof. Thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on. Professor Olurode, former National Commissioner with INEC.
But let me say before I leave that each time our elections attention reading, I can assure you, everything will go on well. Let's be positive about this country. We need to build a nation. We need to build a country that all of us will be proud of.